We're all ready. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back physically. So it's great to have this first meeting where we can all get together in person. I'm sure you're all going to enjoy it. We're slightly pushed for time, but I'm sure I'll get a rev up from the Mayor as time goes by. So this is the Te Puna Kōrero meeting of the 7th of April. I just want to let you know that 2 items have been withdrawn from the agenda. Item 6.3, where we've got to take in some new information, and that will come back. And item 6.5, where just in case there were any questions, we don't have staff available to answer it. So that'll come back to another meeting. Right, on the 5th of May, yep. All right, so let's start with the agenda. Do we have any apologies? I haven't received any, which is good. That moves us to item 2, which is the public forum. Now, we've got 2 speakers here this morning. One, Hana Pilkington-Chin, to talk on the free fares item, which is at the end of the agenda, and Carolyn Press-McKenzie, on the other remit on puppy farming. So, Hannah, we're going to take you first. You just remind you've got 5 minutes, and so if you can, we'll let you know when 5 minutes is up, and we'll just take it from there. All right? So away you go, Hannah.
Kia ora, thanks so much. Mika is also speaking alongside, so we'll just be jumping between the 2 of us. So kia ora, I'm Hannah. I'm speaking as one of the Free Fares campaign organisers today, also someone from Porirua and someone who is a student, so going between Wellington and Porirua. And we're speaking in support of the proposed remit about free public transport. Mika, did you just want to introduce yourself?
Kia ora, I'm Mika. I'm a student at Vic, originally from Nelson, and I'm one of the organisers for the Free Fares campaign.
So we're just wanting to speak today in support of the proposed remit about free public transport. I'll start with an update about the Free Fares campaign since Porirua City Council joined our coalition last year, and some of the progress we've made on this and where we are currently heading. And then Mika will run through why we think this remit really matters and the significance of getting local government New Zealand on board for free fares. So I just wanted to start with thanking Porirua City Council. It's been really valuable to have you guys on board. Just so awesome to have another council in support of this, another voice communicating to the government that we need free fares for students, community service card holders and under 25s. Porirua City Council sent a letter to Minister Wood late last year, and we really appreciate that. We actually heard from him last November that he was hearing about free fares every day, that there wasn't a day that he didn't end up hearing about it. Having your guys' voice in the mix was really helpful for that. Our coalition has grown. We now have around 17 members of the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity, including 9 councils currently supporting this kaupapa. I won't run through the list, but city councils, district councils and regional councils from around the country. We had our petition handed to Minister Wood a few weeks ago. That was our petition, which had over 13,000 signatures at the time. And we're currently going through the petitions process alongside this other mahi with local government, wanting to get local government New Zealand on board and other directions. Currently writing our written submission to the petitions committee. Initially, last year and this year, we've been advocating for free public transport for these groups to be funded in this year's budget and in the emissions reduction plan. And we're yet to see what is actually in both of these plans. We're expecting some reduction of fares, but based on our conversations with Minister Wood and others, we're not expecting free fares to be fully funded for our target groups in this budget. So we want to keep pushing this year, and I guess that's what today is about as well, how we can keep pushing so that, hopefully this will be funded next year or as soon as possible. One thing that we see as a real success is that free public transport just seems to be a huge thing in public discourse at the moment. With the half price reduction, it's become really relevant. There's a lot of coverage in news, and it's exciting to see that the wider public and groups across all sectors really care about this. I just wanted to add as well, we are fully in support of the proposed remit including total mobility card holders and their support people. These groups were not included in our petition, and we see it as a massive oversight that we didn't include them in free fares last year, because disabled people need to be included in public transport equity. So we totally back this, and as a campaign, we're currently moving towards including total mobility card holders and their support people in all of our campaigning going forward. So we also really support that addition for Porirua City Council's proposed remit. I'll just hand over to Mika now to talk about Local Government New Zealand.
Kia ora. I'll just run through quickly some reasons why we think this remit is a really important step for free fares. Firstly, obviously, we think that the more voices that we have calling for free fares, the better. Every group that joins adds legitimacy and power to our call. If we can get Local Government New Zealand on board, that gives us representation from across all Aotearoa. LGNZ represents people from across the whole nation, and all of these collective interests being united through local government can help show how prevalent and popular free fares is as an idea. It helps give central government the sense that citizens across Aotearoa would support free fares, and thereby helps them to justify implementing it as a policy. Obviously, another reason to support it is that we're in a climate crisis. The IPCC report, which I'm sure you saw came out on Tuesday, highlighted that we need emissions to peak by 2025 and then drastically reduce. Transport's one of our biggest emission sources in New Zealand, and we need urgent action to reduce this and incentivize mode shift towards more sustainable forms of public transport. Another key reason is that an LGNZ remit would be really important, is that we want central government to fund this. It's really important we keep the pressure on central government in this respect. We know they have a lot of money in their Climate Emergency Response Fund and in their budgets every year, and they have shown that they can very quickly reduce fare prices nationwide, as they've done with this half-price fares thing. They have the funds and they have the reasons. All they need is the popular support and a mandate from the people. And we think LGNZ supporting free fares will help show them this. As Hannah mentioned, we don't know if our ask will be fully funded in the budget this year. We're not expecting that to be the case. So therefore, we need to keep building up pressure long term for the next budget and keep our eyes open for further opportunities to keep putting pressure on central government in that respect. Thank you very much for your time and your support on this issue. It does give me a lot of hope to see elected officials leading well when it comes to climate solutions, because I find that isn't often the case. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have and look forward to further cooperation.
Thanks, Hannah and Mika. Are there any questions from councillors? There aren't? Okay, thank you very much, guys. We'll, I don't know whether you want to stay on, but we'll be voting on this at the end of our agenda today. So thank you. Right, that moves us to Carolyn. Are you there, Carolyn? You can hear us? Great.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Excellent. So you've got 5 minutes as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Carolyn Press McKenzie. I'm the CEO and founder of Huha, Helping You Help Animals Charitable Trust, and we were established in 2001. Huha is New Zealand's leading no-kill animal welfare shelter. We service the whole of the country, and we're currently building our new hub on the Haywoods, so we'll be your neighbours soon too, which will be great. Our job is to help people and to help animals. One of the scenarios we see too much of is the pain and suffering of animals and the distress of new owners due to the unregulated practice of puppy milling. Over the past decade, we've taken in hundreds of diseased, emotionally broken and genetically compromised puppies and breeding dogs from puppy mills. We currently have more than 30 in our care and have spent more than $60,000 in the last few months just caring for those particular animals, giving them the medical support they need and the care they need. I have personally gone myself undercover into 7 puppy mill operations, and they were extremely confronting. What we see is always the same. High volumes of animals confined to small cages or yards, living in filthy conditions with very few of their physical or emotional needs met, if any. It's usually a family-run business handed down from mother to child. Often, if caught, they'll hide behind hoarding or just being a cute old lady who maybe has a little issue. But they're aiming for the pity card when in reality, this is an incredibly huge business. One bitch can have 3 litters of puppies a year. Average is about 7 puppies per litter. So she can produce for about 10 years. And so during that 10 years, she could have 210 puppies. These puppies sell online usually from between $1,000 and $6,000 each. So if you multiply the 210 puppies she has in 10 years by a conservative $2,000 a puppy, one breeding bitch will bring in a breeder $420,000 in its lifetime, which is quite a lot of work. Puppy mills are packed with breeding bitches. Puppy mills we go to can have anywhere from 10 breeding bitches to 100 breeding bitches. We went to one that actually had 200. So you can imagine the huge amount of money that is passing through, and we are yet to uncover a puppy mill that actually pays its taxes. A very key point to make is that hundreds of puppies could pass through one of these mills in your community, but as they move on well before they're 12 weeks old and before they're required to be registered, as a council, you may never know that these animals actually even exist. There's no trail, no accountability for them, their life, their death, or their future. Many people clip the ticket along the way. Puppy millers break up often underage litters and disperse them to pet stores across the country to service stores' needs for variety and quick turnaround. And these pet stores, there are some good pet stores, but there are a lot of really unscrupulous pet stores right across New Zealand. We've yet to meet a pet store that does suitability or property checks, nor one that supplies desexing contracts to the new purchaser. We've also identified a pattern of pet stores selling entire animals and then encouraging the new owner to breed so that they can buy back those puppies and sell them too. Trade Me and similar sites are the front doors of puppy milling. Traditionally, puppies would be transported to the purchasers, or they would meet the breeder on the side of the road or at a petrol station. But now the puppy millers are getting smart, and purchasers are also starting to see that that's not appropriate. So the puppy millers have started using beard houses, and they're people that they pay to pretend that the puppies are raised in their home. They're the front door now. Often the puppies that are bred are marked as cute companions for families, the elderly and children, but the puppies or the product is often damaged, under-socialised, inbred, and often seriously genetically flawed. And people have to spend an awful lot of money on them. It can break hearts, and it can destroy what could be a lovely occasion for a family.
Carolyn, you've got 1 minute, Carolyn.
Oh, that's okay. I've only got one thing to do.
Okay.
We recently did a survey of 380 dog owners. 44% bought their puppies from unregistered breeders. 34% did not view the puppies before purchasing. 71% did not sign a contract or desexing agreement. 56% were given no advice, and 100% were not made aware of behavioural or medical issues. And of those, 51% of the puppies did develop health and behavioural issues.
That's it. Thank you, Caroline.
No problem.
Do we have any questions from councillors? No. So thank you, Carolyn. And again, we'll be making a decision on this when we get to the agenda item at the end of our agenda. Thank you for coming along. Right, councillors, that moves us to item 3, which is conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts of interest that people wish to declare? No. There being none, we'll move on to notifications of extraordinary business, of which there are none either. And so item 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the Puna Kōrero meeting on the 24th of March 2022. I'll move those minutes as a true and correct record to get them onto the table, seconded by Councillor Ford. Does anyone have any comments to make about the minutes? No? Okay, I'll now move those as a true and correct record. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. So that moves us on to item 6.1, which is the closures, application for reserve closures for the Bottomley Park trunk sewer upgrade. So I'll move that to get it onto the table. Do I have a seconder, please? Mayor Baker, thank you very much. Now, take it that we have read this item. We're asking to approve the temporary closures and to delegate power to the Chief Executive. Before asking officers to speak, if they need to, do councillors have any questions on this item that they wish officers to clarify for us? No, I think it's pretty straightforward, and without further ado, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. So that moves us to item 6.2, which is the Whitby Town Centre parking. I'm going to move that item to get it onto the table, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you very much. Now, this is about implementing some changes, car parking changes in Whitby Town Centre. We also asked that officers come back about provision of some extra car parks that have been around for years, probably 9 years or more. And that's been done in this paper as well. So I wonder who's going to talk to this? Come on, I'm just going to get somebody to talk to this. Is Jane going to do this or you, Ruben? Oh, Jane, you're right there. I didn't see you, sorry. For any questions, great. Do you want to come up to the... That's fine. Yep. Just a very quick summary of...
Okay. It's been an ongoing request from some businesses and churches for an increased parking or more for the provision of more car parking, particularly the Baptist church at the end. There's also restricted movement along the southern end. This came up at council in 2020 and with a resolution, and the council requested that more consultation be undertaken and reviewed. So the people who are interested in wanting more car parking want to cut into the reserve land beside the library and the lake. A preliminary look at that shows that we could put in 12 additional car parks in that space, but it would be cutting into the reserve and a retaining wall across the reserve there. The reserve is identified in the reserves management plan. It's listed in the proposed district plan. It's the trees. There's 2 macrocarpet trees there, and they are both listed in the reserve management plan and the proposed district plan as notable trees. They're remnants of the shelter belt that used to be there. So yes, there could be 12 additional car parks. These would be publicly available, so it's not guaranteed that they would be available when the businesses and churches actually want them. But we've also outlined how in the paper how the process for doing it would work, so that through the reserves you'd have to change that part of the reserves to reflect its use as car parking. This would be it's a reasonably complex process with a cost attached of about $12,000, and it involves consultation as well. We've done a preliminary costing for the process and the construction of the car parks, and it's roughly in the realm of $330,000. That's at the upper end. This is unbudgeted and would need to come from existing budgets if the council chose to do that. So alternatively, we looked at improvements to the car parking issues, and this could be made to making the existing car parks more available by putting in time-restricted car parking. There's also about 8 car parks that are currently informally marked out to various businesses that has no formal standing. It's not a condition of any consent. So we would remove those 8 marked, and they would then be just on-street car parking. So and in addition, there's unrestricted car parking available in Discovery Drive and 130 unutilised car parks in the Adventure Park car park. And in 2015, the council actually constructed a pathway up from there to the crossing to make it easy for people to get to the church. And this is often used by people when there's a funeral on. That's when there's the issue. So people use it. So the Anglican Church was reasonably happy with the arrangement where somebody will drop an older person off at the church door, and then they'll go and park the car and then walk up to the car park, walk up to the church. So, and in terms of the constricted movement at the southern end, that can be dealt with through yellow lines and traffic resolution. So officers are recommending that the yellow lines be installed and that the introduction of the time-restricted parking that will be used to control the parking will need to be monitored, and that would also apply to the library car park where we put in P90 car parks. So we're not recommending that you cut into the reserve, but that option is there.
Thank you, Jane. Yep. Do we have questions? Councillor Trillin.
No, not a question from me. Actually, I just wanted to speak to this. Thanks very much for the explanation. And actually, my first comment was I found this report was very detailed in its consideration of looking at what had been asked for. I found it very easy to understand the recommendations, and it was detailed really well. Thank you for that. I agree with the conclusion that officers have come to here. I think for what would be a relatively low number of car parks at the cost of a loss of reserve land with a non-budgeted cost as well, to me it makes sense that we don't proceed with the request for extra car parks. I don't think we should be carving up our green spaces for more car parking. And I thought that the solutions offered by officers were good practical solutions. The no stopping signs, the time limits, I think that finds a really good solution to what has been requested here. So you just wanted to speak to it and say I'm in support of the officer recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Baker and then Councillor Duncan.
Oh, no, I'm supportive of it as well. Just a question on the traffic map, which you might not be able to, and I'm sure it's in the report. I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. The yellow lines that have been put in, is that just 3 car parks? Because it looks longer than 3 car parks. I'm happy with it because that's where it gets blocked all the time.
Yeah, no, that's just 3 car parks.
Okay.
That would result in removal.
This is a much better layout, so I'm happy with it. Thank you.
With the addition of 8,
Yeah, I know.
we're a net gain of 5.
I have no problem with walking to Adventure Park, so I actually think the plan is now working. By the time you put those 8 car parks back in and put the time limits on, it'll work well. Thank you.
I think Councillor Duncan's question has been answered. So anyone else want to talk to this around the table? Yes. Councillor Waddle.
Thank you, Ross. I think it's a great proposal. I think adding that time restriction to the Whitby Library car park is going to be beneficial, especially not only for the library but for the Plunket Creche that are there, and their car parks get chewed up quite easily by long-term stayers in that car park. I've just got a quick question around that parking demand survey.
You've gone. We can't hear you, Nathan.
Parking demand.
We can now.
How easy is it to conduct?
Oh, I think you're breaking up. So you can just wave your hand. So this question is not. You still support the idea of what's being proposed. You still support the proposal. You can ask the question offline if you need to, or come back before we finish.
Can I just say, if it was a question about the parking survey that I think
he
it
asked
started
about
off
parking
that,
survey.
We're not proposing doing that. We're just saying that it could be done.
No, we're not.
It was more to say that if you wanted more evidence or proof that there was, greater demand, that would have to be done. I'm not sure if that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Just what's the extent of the survey? Is it someone being there for a full day, or is it monitoring systems?
I'm not entirely clear, but from what Transport said, I think it's probably a person on site.
Yeah. So, Councillor Hayward, then Councillor Ford.
Kia ora, mātua upoko me here, kaikona hira katoa. Two pātai. First one is, the report talks about the objections noted by certain individuals with the Whitby Residents Association and Paul Edlin with regards to the recommendation around the additional car parks. Can you give some commentary around what their position was on the overall solution, time limits, and the removal of signage? I'll let you answer that question first.
As I said in the report, they were supportive of these proposals, but they still wanted the car parking. A couple of them.
Supportive. They were supportive. Yeah.
They were, yeah.
The second part was, I'm still confused around enforcement of the 90-minute parking and what costs that represents to council. Can someone just be clear about what that means for the council in that regard?
That's an enforcement question. How do we enforce this?
Well, it would.
And what's
I
the
don't
cost?
know what the cost is, but it would be parking wardens going up there in the same way that they do in the city centre and chalking tyres and then coming back and.
So we're not proposing to increase our staffing to do this. So it's a sunk cost, basically. So
Does you?
Yeah, my question
Councillor
was
Ford?
around the enforcement of the P90.
Enforcement.
Was it? Were you envisioning that we would have staff go up there because time limits are only as useful as our ability to enforce those time limits? Yes.
Yeah, that's noted. Councillor Morrell, you had a question?
Oh, no, I don't have a question. I have a comment. I mean, as long as I've been on council, this has been a dilemma, but this probably goes way, way back to when the original town plan was planned. The whole area parking is inadequate for the total population that was now in Whitby, which never can be, is never going to be able to be addressed. There's no point in just, I'm against cutting those, and we've got to put that to bed, because that request has been there for years as well about creating this 8 car parks, and they have got Adventure Park across the road. But as I say, the whole design of the whole area is just inadequate for what's available, what's the population in Whitby. But the history is, it's in hindsight, it's a great thing. Okay, noted. All right. I'm just about to put this motion before that. I'm in agreement with it as well. I mean, I think that what's been suggested is very logical. The issue will be enforcement in the short term anyway, well, in the long term as well, probably. But regardless of that, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, that moves us to item 6.4, which, when I take my glasses off, is Titahi Bay Beach Community Safety Audit. This is just a progress report, remember. I'm going to move the report to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Hayward, thank you very much. So we have Alison. I'm not going to ask Alison to go through this again, this one, but because I think we're clear what direction we're headed. But are there any questions? Have I moved this? Yes. Yeah, that's great. Sorry. Yeah. Forgetting. Senior moment, never mind. Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no mātua upoko. My questions are specifically around clarity with the community, and the particular example I'd like to use is around South Beach access for those with accessibility challenges. I commend the council for putting in and marking a space for those who require disability car parks. That is good. What use is a car park if the individual who's in a wheelchair cannot get onto the beach from that car park? So I think that is an example of where I'd like to see some clarity around how we engage with the community, and perhaps give some clarity in this meeting right now for those individuals who require that type of access.
Okay. Noted that. Do you want to answer that, or do come up, Alison?
Through you, Chair. I take your point, Councillor. It is a bit tricky from there. The path does extend up around the toilets to get there and then down to the beach, but you're right, it's quite steep down there. There are a lot of access issues that would need to be picked up in the master plan because all of them would be, expensive to implement and need some budget assigned to that and some really good thinking around the access. So unfortunately, it'll have to wait for the master plan.
You have a second question or a follow-up?
While I am encouraged by the progress report in terms of reporting a lot of progress, again, the point I would relay to officers is clarity and proactiveness in terms of the progress being made on this work is vital for ensuring as much community buy-in with regards to the role council plays in improving safety on that beach. A lot of work has been done over the last few months, and I would commend at this point as well the police for their work in apprehending and seizing the dirt bikes of a group of individuals who have not just been going to the Titahi Bay but across the entirety of Porirua and causing mayhem. Internal vigilance is going to be required by all of us, including the police, to make sure that continues to be abated. But also and I would just summarise, there is a provision in here around even the Bay Drive property, the Nixon block, as part of the master plan. I would be encouraging council to be very mindful of the role that Bay Drive has played, so that property has played in terms of community engagement in the past. Again, care will be needed to maintain community buy-in. Kia ora.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to commend the work that's been carried out already on Bottomley Lane. I've had a number of phone calls from residents saying how lovely it is, the chair that's been replaced up there. It's fantastic. Good job.
Any other comments or questions by councillors? There being none, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you for that. So that moves us to item 6.6, which is the proposal to rename Calliope Crescent. I'll now move this to get it onto the table. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ford. I note. It would be a good idea if somebody does talk to this. Tani, you're going to talk to this? Okay.
Yes.
Go for it.
Huri e te whare, mōrena tātou, me ngā kaimahi, me ngā kauniera hoki, mōrena tātou. So, just in regards to, obviously, this proposal on this paper, it was put to council last year, through Māori Language Week, around the proposal to change Calliope Crescent, to give it a new name that was requested through Ngāti Toa. And we've just basically followed that process to where we are today. Ngāti Toa have gifted a new name for Calliope Crescent. And I think just through our treaty partnership, we're basically honouring that. So for me, just in summary, I think it's time that we basically look at our street names and align them with the diversity of our city. That's pretty much it in a summary. It's aligning with what all the other councils are proposing at the moment. Wellington City Council and Hutt City Council are working with their iwi partners to change their street name policies as well. So I think it's in a good. This is a good direction for us. So kia ora tata.
Thanks, Tani. Councillor Morell, you wish to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully in agreement for this. I guess because of these, for two reasons. One, because it's the right thing to do, but two, also because it's also the size of the street, which is now, and the number of houses, properties that are in it, means that the cost of doing this is a very low cost. But what I would be concerned about is the go forward position if a number of street changes were proposed closed, because that has a huge consequence for the people who live in those streets and the costs involved, because it's not just, you try going into a government department to change your name or change your street name now or change your address. It's a huge rigmarole, and I just think that we have to be very careful that this is not seen as a precedent, and that I see that we are going to reconsider the policy of the council's policy for naming streets, and I hope that's for the go forward position rather than the go back position, so that if we are looking at the future, any new streets names are done in conjunction with an Aotearoa, but any existing street names, I just think is the cost involved in that it would come back to ratepayers, and I would not be, I probably won't be around, but I wouldn't like to see that happening. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Morell. We'll have, we'll take them in order. Mayor Baker, and then Councillor Duncan, then Councillor Trillin, and I might ask for some comments from Taku as well. So, Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Yes, no, I support this completely. I just want to confirm the consultation that was done with the locals. I know there's not many left in that street because KO have knocked down so many houses. I obviously had an email from somebody in that street, which I've forwarded on to all councillors. So I really just want to confirm, because of COVID, I know that we had to cancel the street meeting, but I really just want to make sure that we did completely cover the consultation, totally support the name and Ngāti Taua going forward on this. So could you give me an answer to that, Pete? I think you did the consultation, did you? Or was it Tane? Who did it?
No, sorry, I did.
Sorry.
And again, you correct. It was due to, I guess, our outbreak with COVID that we couldn't get the engagement that we wanted to, but letters and confirmation was sent out to every, every household on the street, as well as owners, because we had to actually look at owners that lived outside of Porirua. So they were all sent letters as well, just to cover that off. And so far we've had, I've had at least 5 emails of feedback around the name. Most of them are positive. So in terms of that, that's as far as, in terms of consultation, that's as far as we've got to at the moment.
Sorry, so the owners and tenants both get a shot at it?
Owners and tenants, yeah.
Okay.
Just for feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. So in the interest of making it easier for me, so Councillor Hayward, I know you're next, Mike. And you were behind everyone, but I'm taking you before. So make it short.
Kia ora mātua upoko. Thank you for your kindness in allowing me to speak before others who put their hands up in the protocol. But I will say very briefly that I support the motion, obviously, and it obviously is one of those things about te reo, which has a metaphorical capacity that hoturua horua can mean could be a very useful analogy for the relationship between tauiwi me tangata whenua. A double hold waka, moving in the same direction. I think it's an appropriate name in that context. I would briefly disagree with the comments of the Councillor Morell regarding further name changes. This has been changed because of a trauma that has come upon mana whenua. There are other locations which I would like to bring to the Council's attention in due course, where I think also that trauma gets to be played out. If your identity and your family's history were tied up in such trauma, you would not want to, for reasons of cost, hold up the process of reconciliation, to address fairly, to show where there were challenges and problems, but to move forward. As the CE of the Runanga o Tō Rangatira said earlier this week in an op-ed in the Don Post, we cannot do anything to change the actions of our ancestors, but we can do something right now. This is just one part of it. I commend us, council officers and Ngāti Toa, for working collaboratively to do this. More work must be done. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Duncan.
I hate to be a wet blanket on this, but we're embarking on teaching a full curriculum of New Zealand history in schools. And our report on page 82, 84 calls for educational context attached to the name change proposed. What concerns me with this request for a name change, apart from it being based on a flawed premise initially, gives a very one-sided view of what actually happened in the run-up to Te Rauparaha's arrest. I applaud the teaching of New Zealand history in schools, but it behoves us to ensure that the full story is told. I wanted to know why Governor Gray believed he was right in arresting and detaining Te Rauparaha. I was disappointed that there was no context in the documents for research from officers to corroborate or to challenge the assertions. So I did some research of my own, and I stand to be corrected on the things I discovered from Taku's response. But my references include Victoria University, the Encyclopedia of New Zealand, The Stirring Times of Te Rauparaha by William Travis, and The Early History of Rangatiki by James Wilson. From that research, I found that what concerned Governor Gray was a document circulating amongst tribes inciting an uprising against the Crown. This document was supposedly signed by Te Rauparaha. It was this action that saw preparations made for his arrest to avoid the bloodshed that would ensue. Te Rauparaha's son, Tamihana, gave a detailed account of events leading up to the capture of his father in William Travis's book. If I'm going on, you stop me.
Yeah, I mean, you want to... It is a speech.
Yeah.
So remember, you can't read this stuff. So
Okay.
What's your key point?
Okay, now the point is that the whole thing is based on the premise that the Calliope took him. There were actually two Calliopes, and the Calliope that this street is named after is not the first Calliope, but the second that came out to open Calliope Dock in Auckland and was the first ship to land in that dock. And that's the one the street's named after, and so it's on a flawed premise initially.
Can we seek information about whether that is true or factually correct or not? Which Calliope was our Calliope Street named after? Taku, do you want to, or Tani?
As far as I'm concerned, it was the vessel that illegally kidnapped our tūpuna without charge. We know that the whole emphasis of the Crown at the time was to confiscate our land. For Porirua itself, it took 52,000 acres on Ngāti Toa. So there was a resistance. There was a resistance. It had to be. What were we to do? Fall in front of this new body of Crown tenure that came to our land and impose on us what do they call it? A sort of an English way of living.
Taku, sorry, I appreciate
I'm bedazzled anyway, but the point I'm making is we need these changes, and I certainly appoint them.
But the question was, and I think what I heard you say, that it was named after the first Calliope, which took Te Rauparaha in 1846, as I understand.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
not
without charge.
Well, that yeah.
It was a kidnapping instigated by Gray.
Sorry, well, I understand that. I'm not here arguing that or saying that. I'm just interested in the fact of whether it was named after the first or second Calliope. That was all. I don't know where you get your information, Councillor. And it probably doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Question, do we also then change the name of Driver Crescent, since he was originally arrested, taken on the driver and held on the driver till he was transported to the Calliope?
Yeah, well, I think that will be played out.
What's the problem? There's a whole lot of racist implications all around the city.
Well, but we're not here to talk about that.
Our people,
we're here to talk about the name change of Calliope Crescent right now. Councillor Trillin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess first of all, just to push back on a bit on what we've just been talking about, the important thing is that the name that we are talking about here is one that, as Councillor Hayward said, is associated with trauma, and it's very important that we change that. And I actually do think that it's important to have this conversation as part of a broader conversation around names right across the city. That is actually what we're talking about, because this is significant in pushing back against what has been horrific active colonisation of Māori people, and it's important that we take a stand against that and change it wherever we can.
Councillor Trillin, I think
it's
you'll have
part
an
of that.
opportunity, and we'll all have an opportunity to talk about our thoughts on this when the name change policy comes back or comes to council.
Yeah.
As has been hinted at. I don't think we want to get into that discussion now. I mean, what we're here is talking about is a one-off change,
Yeah.
which has been done for particular reasons, all right? Part of which have already been raised by people around the table and in the paper itself. So
Yeah.
I just want, this is not a chance for us to go into great detail about the rights and wrongs of what happened in the past.
Okay, cool. I do have a question, though, and actually, so obviously I fully support this. My question actually was, Taku, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more around the context of the name that has been proposed, Matahurua.
Yeah, Matahurua was in keeping with where the road is situated, and we're surrounded by both a myriad of different nationalities, and particularly those that come from the Pacific. And so Kupe was the discoverer. Him and his wife were the primary discoverers of New Zealand. And so keeping with that big vessel type, with the ocean type, with the connections to the island, to the Pacific, we decided that appropriately sitting within that community, reflecting the people of the Isles, the ocean, the discovery, Kupe coming from the Pacific, we thought that the naming of that area, their particular street, after his vessel, was appropriate. So that was the name that we put forward, and hopefully that will be the name that's selected, that's agreed to.
Thank you for that context, Taku. Are there any other councillors? Councillor Ford? Yeah.
I'm supportive of the recommendations in this paper. I just wanted to give credit where it was due. In August of 2021, former councillor Litia Ahoy had made a post to say that it was time for us to make a change to some of the names that immortalised names or objects of people that had been responsible for killing many of tangata whenua back in the day. I think the timing and opportunity for this name change is fitting with the current housing redevelopment. I'd also hate to be the wet blanket to Councillor Duncan's wet blanket, but history is written by the victors, and it's the victims who write the memoirs. So I just leave you on that note. Thank you.
Oh, very philosophical, Councillor Ford. Fair comment. Okay, anyone else want to make... Do you want to make any final comment, Taku?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to put the motion that we make this name change. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? No. You wish to be recorded, Councillor Duncan? No, that's fine. Yeah, it is. So that is carried. Thank you, everyone. Right, so that now gets us to item 6.7, which is the LGNZ policy remits. You'll see that you have two remits on the table, one with regard to the public transport fares and the other to puppy farming. We've already had speakers, public speakers, talk to those at the beginning of the meeting. And remind you that both these remits were considered and supported by this council in 2021, so they're coming back for a second time round. So I'm going to move the report with the remits to get it on the table. I have a second, Councillor Trillin. I'm going to open it for discussion, just reminding you that we've already had speakers. We already agreed to it last year. So unless make your comments brief, please. So I'm going to let's talk about the first remit, all right? Which is funding free public transport for students and others. Councillor Morell.
Thank
which
you,
ones
Mr.
you wish to talk?
Just one question. Are you going to put them separately?
I can put them separately.
Yeah, please, I'd like that to happen. I just have to remind councillors, nothing in this world is free. And you've heard me say it before. I know you've heard me say it before, but in the end, someone has to pay, and someone has to pay. So, we're looking at a crisis right across this country and health and all these other things, and suddenly we're now trying to get some government money to fund fares, and I'm one of the gold card ones, so I would probably benefit from that. But I would be more than happy to pay, because I think it's user pays, and so I cannot support this in principle. And I know it's climate change and all these other things, but in the end of the day,
Good on you.
I'm not.
Councillor Ford,
you are.
I think there's no need to comment on Councillor Morell's opinion. So
I'm used to it.
yeah, but it's a little unfair on you.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a very valid. You're making valid points.
Yeah. So I just need to say that I oppose this. I don't support it. And I remind you again, there's nothing in this world that's free.
Thank you for that. Are there any other speakers to this first remit? Councillor Trillin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I won't talk a whole lot on this because, to be honest, I can't say much more than Hannah and Mika already did. So I just wanted to talk a little bit a process on this. So first of all, drawing attention to the total mobility card holders. So that wasn't included in the in what we passed last year. It's subsequently been included by the campaign based on a lot of feedback they've got from groups they've been working with explicitly to include disabled people within this as well, which I think is very important. So I just want to acknowledge that. The second is just to say I've already reached out to members of the Wellington Region Climate Change Forum and also the Young Elected Members Network, and there's a lot of support for this, both regionally and right across the country as well. So hopefully if we get this across the line today, I'll be reaching out to them again in order to secure support. I'm confident that we'll be able to get this to the floor at LGNZ and hopefully get it passed as well. That's everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trillin. I'm not sure that I understand this. Does anyone else want to talk to this motion? No? Okay, so I'm going to take free fares plus 1 and 2. 1 and 3, sorry, which is receive the report, note, agreement will be sought. Is that the one? Yep. So I'm now putting the first proposal, which is the first remit, which is the public transport one. So the items on the table, I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Carried? Oh, except for you against, Councillor Morell. I wouldn't forget you.
Do you wish to have that noted? You
wish to have it noted? Yep. Okay. Now we will go to the second one, which is asking the government to introduce puppy farming legislation to reform that area. Does anyone wish to speak to this? No? Right, I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to move that we go into public excluded. Do I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Ford. Are we